Alright, so I have watched the South Korean drama called My Shy Boss, and of course, as opposed to the last series that I did, I commented at the end as well, which isn't ideal, but due to circumstances, I don't know. I might in the future commentate on the spot once again, but with this one, I mean, it's always it's just so useful to sort of gather all one's thoughts and just go to the very end just to see how it all really sums up. And so this is obviously what I'll do now, and it's not essentially, it's not very different from one episode to another. It's all the same sort of mix of elements, really. Yeah, sure. And sure enough, it did mostly. It became essentially tackled the topic of uh, introversion, essentially. What am I saying? It's not called Shy Boss, it's called Introverted Boss. Anyway, yeah, um, and it did consistently, but more so at the beginning, mostly. Yeah, um, it did, of course, go a lot. Still, mm, it was, it became, more romantic as it went on. And it sort of took me by surprise, I suppose, it shouldn't have, but I really tried to go into series or films without checking. I did check, well, I did go by primary genre, which was comedy. I did have comedy, especially with the sounds and such, so sound effects were comedically oriented, but it it became much more romantic than comedic as it went on, of course. Uh, it didn't do too badly on that front either. So, the way it was built up, sure, some points might have been a bit too sort of sickly sweet and such, but the overall thing, so, that they did have obstacles, so it wasn't just nothing, it wasn't just, everything's absolutely perfect and such. And the fact that everything that happened with her sister and such did present a mature sort of perspective on this. Also, let's say, yeah, it was, yeah. So it was essentially multi-layered. It wasn't one-dimensional, and I think that helped it. That was helpful. And the comedy counteracted, the if you have just an entirely romantic series, then it might fall to, it might be too weak on its own. You know, sort of like how Spellbound. I was go back to that. I think it was South Korean, wasn't it as well? Um, as a movie, that was quite well done because of the multiple genres. So that included horror. Horror was only mentioned in passing in the series, but it wasn't one of the genres. Uh, but the same thing with Spellbound, it mixed genres, so it was also comedic, and I don't think it had it didn't have, it was essentially more comedic than this one, but the comedy I liked. Yeah, certainly, especially at the beginning. There was more comedy there, but it still retained it just a bit anyway as it went. So it's not like there's just no comedy whatsoever, just romance. There was everything really. There was a bit of yeah, corporate bureaucracy nonsense as well in a way. but not too much. So that's good, otherwise it'd be too much. I mean, I guess, if I didn't actually read the synopsis before beginning, just to not be prejudiced before beginning. That's always what I do. In the first episode, I got to admit, it was a bit confusing. You know, so first you get the suicide, and then the presentation. So that's just bizarre. That's a bizarre sort of format. I personally wouldn't have done that if I was a director. I mean, a bit too much, to first have such a melodramatic moment and then to have presentation. It's not really there. Then I don't know. This is it, though. But it's not too bad still. But it was just a bit jarring, you know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe personally, I would have left the suicide exclusively to flashbacks, perhaps. I think it would have been made better. I still don't fault it for much, really. It's not really too bad, honestly. But the presentation was a bit strange in comparison. I didn't even know what it was supposed to be about. It also gave the impression that Opera was going to be much more of a I don't know, character in the story. Obviously, I didn't read the fact that it was a PR agency, so if I did, I would have thought, well, yeah, this might be PR agency uh, advertising Opera. But it won't necessarily keep doing that forever. We just happen to have done it. Uh, for a moment, I really thought that every episode will feature an opera or something, because the first episode was what they called Phantom of the Opera, right? And I like that opera, but I mean, I thought, everyone might be themed on a different opera as such. I don't necessarily know them all, so I was a bit worried, but that wasn't the case. So yeah, what can we say about the whole series and how it evolved and such? The way everything was slowly known to everyone, and the characters in the movie in the series as well. So essentially, the audience were treated as the first priority, I think. The audience knew, I mean, the background, not necessarily everything still, but the audience usually heard it first. Or when characters were about to reveal something and such, they heard it sort of first, or seen it, in terms of flashbacks, characters suddenly having a flashback and then thinking of telling others about the flashback. So I noticed that was something that they did. So in a way, they had this sort of thing where the audience knew what was going to happen, possibly, but not totally, and then they just judged the characters' reactions based on what they thought and they assumed prior. And it's not entirely something that I've seen done in any other romances or even most other dramas. With most other dramas, you usually either get an omniscient picture, so you get a narrator who says everything, and then maybe it's revealed to the characters. Not necessarily in flashbacks, though. It's not necessarily. I mean, this wasn't omniscient. This was in bits and pieces as well, but the audience still was prioritized. So I mean, there's still that, I guess. But in most other dramas, you either get the sort of omniscient narrator, or one gets the bits and pieces as well, as the characters know them as well. So I don't know. This is somewhere in between, I suppose. In between the yeah. I mean, most dramas, I think, are the latter, where you get the information as the character gets them as well. Um, I think it. I mean, I don't have statistics or anything. It just seems like it after watching everything that I've watched. I don't think there's many omniscient ones. honestly, apart from maybe comedy or stories that don't really matter anyway. So they just tell you everything from the get go. Um, yeah, so it was interesting because of that. So he kind of knew already. I mean, you knew a bit of what happened and how it might have happened. Then you formed theories. You know, like for example, in the first few episodes when the news article came out, I knew how it happened. I mean, I had to pause to think about it, but I kind of knew. I could at least, based on the information I already had, I sort of knew exactly how it happened. Uh, but then, of course, later on, it was all revealed to the characters themselves, admitted, etc. So the audience doesn't need to both take in the information themselves and judge the characters' reactions to the information. They just concentrate on the characters' reactions. So anyway, that's that bit there that I noticed. Then, and, one one thing though that I thought might have been a bit dubious though is with regards to music. Now most of the music was fine and it's sort of appropriate most of the time. Some was more appropriate than others, I suppose, and some. The problem, though, I thought, was the fact that it didn't have many music. It didn't have much music. So yeah, the music didn't seem to be very numerous. In other words, we've used it's a series, right? And it didn't seem to be that voluminous. Anyway, yeah, it's two different words for the same meaning pretty much, and it's the same music. They seem very poppy, pop songs. Some were very literal, with literally "kiss me" in the lyrics, and that's pretty much the only thing that uh, people who do not can understand Korean would understand, and it's very in your face in a way. So the OST, in my opinion, wasn't it was average at best, but not above average. I think because of this mainly. I mean, if they varied it, maybe it's all the same thing. So it wasn't. That sort of was its weak point. I mean, if only they had more and they used more. Normally with a series, like any series, anything long running, you do get the same music, but you do get a variety. So you get much more, and more is used all over. So essentially, every single song isn't used as much as it was in the series, I think, but others are used as well. So every single one of them is used slightly less, but they're all still used quite a lot. And honestly, I never had this sort of thing that I thought with any other series. Usually, I really like the music by the end of it because of repetition, etc. I mean, I suppose I still like it, but not incredibly well. Because I thought it was still effective in many moments. Many whether romantic or comedic. It still set the mood, but I don't know. Some was inappropriate, just some, not all. Um, with regards to instances of this, not whether the music itself should exist or not, you know, so like that. Yeah. Also, it would have been useful if they provided some lyrics. Sometimes I don't think I ever saw any lyrics, as in a subtitle translation. I mean, I suppose they just thought, yeah, that well, they just catered for the Korean demographic, I suppose. I mean, otherwise the subtitles were pretty good. I have no complaints at all about subtitles. They just forgot the lyrics for the Korean parts of the song. So, but actually, I mean, now that I think of it, I'm not sure how exactly they coped when when they had so much language in them. Considering that Korean people could understand it. Then I'm not sure. I mean, I'm assuming it could be a bit distracting when there's other scenes and other people talking or chat as well in the same language. I would assume that's why generally symphonic music is better than lyrical music, I think. But no, I did like ultimately how they structured it and how everything was built on top of one another. How she tried to get him out of his shell at church. Well, like at the end, she says that she didn't try to knock. She barged in, sort of. I don't think that's the word she used, but and that did happen, I suppose. And obviously, like in any other series, you get flashbacks of moments within the series itself. So there was such at the very end to I suppose make one remember the series even better after it ends. I'm not entirely sure why people think it should or might have a second season because it seemed to end quite decisively, I suppose. Well, I mean, it could keep on going in the sense that life keeps on going, but otherwise they really didn't. I don't think that they missed anything in terms of plot, at least. Like even the two fathers there met in the last episode. I thought he should have been more direct with his apology for hiking his rent, in my opinion, because he was quite a bastard. Like on the very last episode, Young's father relented just a bit, but throughout, before he gave up his mayoral land as well, he was a bastard, really. I mean, um, he wasn't really ideal at all, and until her own father became a bit aggressive as well. I thought until that moment that he was much better, but then suddenly he becomes aggressive and even violent at one point. It's a pity that throughout the series she ended up being slapped twice. That's really just shouldn't really. Uh, you know, the first time the audience doesn't even know why exactly. Then she might figure. Yeah, the audience might figure out why that happened in that context, but it really shouldn't have happened. I mean, it shouldn't happen in real life either. But even if that was the case, with all the context as it was, it shouldn't happen because she didn't know. I mean, why he did that? Like, if you don't even know why, then it's utterly useless. Not that it ever has any use, but I generally obviously abhor violence of any kind, and especially in a romantic comedic series. One doesn't expect much violence, but there was not a lot by all means. Like even like Stars on Earth, that film, that's a film, not even a series, and that had more violence than this had, even in a short amount of time. So I'm not saying this one had a lot of violence. It didn't. This had much less fun. Well, as we know, movies can have a lot of violence if they are focused on violence. And this was never supposed to be, obviously. So it wasn't really too much. But there were a few slaps and a drop kick, was it? With his father. I mean, it was more comedic than anything, really, the way it happened, but it's still violence. And he did that just because he embarrassed him by being shy in front of an audience. That's not really a good reaction, but the way it happened, I mean, yeah, a bit weird, to say the least. Yeah. Otherwise, though, he was quite of a curmudgeon, I suppose one might say, his father, and he's certainly much different from his son. So, despite, I think that shows that, just because people might be outgoing doesn't mean they're sociable, really. And it's a surprise he even got to be was it a congressman in the first place? I'm not sure if it's called a congress there, it's a politician of some sort anyway. mayor, so hey, in the end. By the way, I was watching this, strangely enough, obviously this wouldn't have happened to many other people because it happened recently. But yeah, I'm watching this and I'm following this subplot about the mayoral election. Not that it went very far, and there wasn't much on it. At the beginning, there was more actually when he mentioned it with regards to the interviews and such. Um, but as I was watching it, suddenly I discovered that the real mayor of Seoul killed himself. I think last time I read, he seemed to have killed himself. Anyway, it wasn't confirmed. Was found dead at the very least. That's quite a coincidence, and didn't seem like it was merited either. But then again, it's whatever people think suicide is fine. Just I don't know. People commit suicide for all sorts of reasons, I suppose. As you might see, yeah, and it's very serious. It wasn't that guy who committed suicide, but yeah, the reasons for suicide are strange, I suppose. I wouldn't personally have, even if it happened the way it did. Yeah, it's very dubious, and yeah, but people have their reasons for suicide. I suppose it's even that in a way. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I don't include that within the sphere of violence. I suppose because it's self-inflicted violence. Well, death really. It was quite a gruesome death, though. Well, yeah. So, but I suppose yeah, that was also though a violent death. So just a bit more violence in what is otherwise a romantic and comedic movie. Series, I mean. Yes, so I've watched so many movies that I might make a mistake, huh? Calling a series a movie. Anyway, I think one of the cutest moments, though, was when the teddy bear was being photographed. That was quite something. Like, the teddy bear himself was traveling and displaying. Yeah, that when they went on that beach thing, it was quite funny. The way it happened, I mean, then there was a bit of drama as well, and that's where they got closer and such. Um, that wasn't. I mean, that you could almost feel the heat, couldn't you? I just the way he was complaining. I mean, his imagination, the fact that he didn't want to even take off his hood, despite boiling underneath it. It was quite funny. It was a prime comedic moment for the hood. Yeah, and but otherwise, I think the five though, well, five, six in total, so with him as well, had quite a dynamic chemistry, I suppose one could say. They did have this thing. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, it's the way it happened. I didn't think at first that what's he called, Sejong was going to be one of them. And, you see him sometimes at the beginning, where he was once an employee along with her, the female protagonist. I don't know why the names just fly off at me, even though I've watched 16 hours of this. I think it was about 16 in total. It must have been 17 to 18 hours because they always had some 10 minutes extra after an hour. So, yeah. But somehow the names still somehow like butterflies just fly off. Somehow I seem to have a harder time remembering Korean names more than Japanese names. I think Japanese names tend to be syllabic, I think, or is it? They have these consonants. Whereas this is the problem with Korean names. Whenever they say them on screen, they don't seem to be pronouncing what I'm reading. So, which is, I think, contributing to forgetfulness. Even within the series itself, I often had no idea who Sam were until some time had passed. I noticed that in films as well. So South Korean films that I've watched, I had very a very hard time just remembering. I mean, I don't normally have such a hard time with even other foreign films. Even Japanese films or such. I don't, because normally what they say is what could be read, but not this one so much. So anyway, yeah. So Rowoon, right? She at least it was spelled Rowoon, but they always called her something else. Not sure why. What now? Uh, Raoul was, well, a strange one, I suppose one could say, as evidenced by the last episode. The way she so took over her sister's life was quite interesting, I suppose one might say. It's like she inhabited her sister. She couldn't draw much like her sister at all. She couldn't draw at all. Yeah. She could draw as much as she could remain clean, as evidenced by the last episode, once again. Yeah. And yeah, that was quite something. Anyway, also I'm not sure so why the guy what's he called again? Oh my god, yeah. Well, I didn't know why you. I think it's called Yun. I'm not sure. This is the thing. I don't think I actually heard him say Yun, but it's pronounced. I mean, it's read as Yun, presumably. UN. I'm not sure if it's actually pronounced like that, but yeah. Anyway, the introverted one. Anyway, yeah, he was. Yeah, he thought that mites and bedbugs feast on crisps. Yeah, crisps, presumably. I'm not sure. I haven't researched this. I don't think necessarily that is true. I don't know. I don't know ultimately, I mean, they do need to eat somehow, but crisps are just, they seem to be much larger than them. And I think they normally exist by default anyway. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't think you need crisps for that anyway. So yeah, anyway, I liked how they began by him bumping into her with regards to the cars. At the beginning, the first few episodes. So I think it was the first episode, maybe, not sure. And then they ended the same way, except she bumped into him. I'm assuming on purpose. So that shows the sort of inversion. In a way, it's interesting. I mean, in personality, they didn't show complete inversion, so he became a bit extroverted, but not really a lot. I mean, at the end, he really tried to go all out, but only for the last few minutes. Other than that, he still had problems speaking publicly and such. But it was a good build-up, let's just say. First one fails, second one, succeeds, but only just about, and just because he had support. So it was quite good in the sense, and the third one didn't really succeed very much. That was just a sentence. So in the end, it didn't really become, suddenly a charismatic public speaker. It didn't. It didn't suddenly, but he made an effort, and she helped with him. As I was saying, though, it wasn't like an introversion of character, and not introversion, a sort of the polarity, changing position. That didn't happen. Kind of like it happened to the cars, but that's more of a blunt symbol in this sense. But no, she was always extroverted. I think she didn't become introverted, so she still cared about what happened with her sister and what happened with his sister. That was quite a powerful scene, by the way, with his sister there on the roof and Raoul. Quite powerful. But yeah, she still cared, but she was still extroverted. But as she says herself at some point, it's only a facade, pretty much. I don't think she's saying facade, but that's the impression. She smiles all the time. Very much a facade, yeah. It was quite weird how on the last episode she went into a bath with his sister, and then suddenly his sister says, maybe we shouldn't get so close. Not sure if that was meant to be a comedic moment, but I don't know how you could say that when you're already in a bath with someone. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, that's that. Um, but yeah, otherwise, his sister did overreact, like she admitted. She overreacted in many cases within the series itself, but also obviously in prior to the series, as shown in flashback. Uh, I mean, if she really knew that it was some sort of mistake with, or if she knew that he was drunk, etc., then I don't know. I think it would be too far. It would be going too far to react like that, in my opinion. At any rate, but she admitted it, and she said that she changed. She tries to change. She even changed her clothes at the end in the last few episodes to indicate that, and that the relationship is starting again. So sort of hopeless. So in a way, this is the thing. There were many moments in the series when you could say, "Oh, this is too stereotypically romantic." But you dig into the background and you go through the history to the entire series and not just that one moment, and you find that it's a mixed picture. So in that sense, this is a mature sort of romantic drama. It's not really just sickly sweet, or stupid. Like, what was that one called? I think it was a Thai movie that I watched once, and they played on these absolutely terrible stereotypes of ugliness and beauty. I mean, it was utterly terrible. I don't know how anyone liked that. And the title was very cheesy as well, and it did fulfill that promise. This, on the other hand, well, the title isn't really very romantic. I mean, I went in knowing mostly just the title. Um, and so in a way, I missed the fact it was romantic, but I didn't mind in the end, as long as it's sort of well built as a romance. I mean, some of the better movies I've watched were romantic in a way. And V for Vendetta isn't quite, the romance isn't there, that it isn't the primary genre, but there was a bit of romance, and I liked it. That is quite well done romance in my opinion, and so is Better Days, that I've watched more recently. That is the epitome, I think, of romance within a very dysfunctional setting and very hectic, very violent setting, but it really fulfilled its premise and promise. The same with this. I mean, it wasn't, an absolutely violent setting like that. As I said, there was a slight bit of that, but not really. You can say, it was full of it, like Better Days was, not at all. Of course, Better Days wasn't focused on PR professionals. I guess that's irrelevant. I mean, she didn't even want to become an employee in the PR industry anyway. But so this is the thing. So if I did read the synopsis, I mean, I was attracted to the title, so I watched it based on the title. Because I did think that it's a bit bizarre to have someone in charge of an industry or company or something who is introverted. I mean, bizarre, but not entirely. Well, I was open to seeing what could happen. At any rate, huh? Uh, and it did fulfill that premise as well, quite well. I mean, he did remain introverted until the end, in a way. He did try a bit, but I cannot complain about that, shall I say. It did do what it promised that it could possibly do, and more, and it was, in a sense, well done on the front, and they show, how introversion works in a sense. I think most introversion is centered around public speaking. I think, I suppose more introverted people wouldn't be able to speak to other individuals as well, but the protagonist here could, in this instance, mostly. He, yeah, he still found it slightly difficult, it seems, with new people and such, but nobody gets to know them, surely. And then as shown later on, he could talk to maybe two or three, as he said, individually. Well, in this sense, yeah, two or three maybe would be the limit, just as he found out with his silent monster team. Yeah. I'm not sure if Korean has the same thing with Japanese. You know, they tend to be, I think they tend to say store as well when it's Western originating words. So that happened in this case. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, honestly. I actually haven't been exposed to as much Korean as I have Japanese. I think this is the most I've ever been exposed to the Korean language, and it's quite different from Japanese, actually, isn't it? There's a lot of this thing as well. I've already noticed there's vocalization in German, where they seem to be about to clear their throat or such, you know, or even spit, possibly. I don't think that happens in Japanese, at least. The two languages are quite different. I mean, scripturally, one can say they're different. But even based on the sound, yeah, they're quite different. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, Korean has more in common with Chinese, which obviously it is. I think it is connected to. Uh, I think I'm not sure. I think might be connected to North Korea, and then North Korea connected to China. Anyway, uh, but yeah, it's. I still didn't quite, apart from what mom meant or such. I haven't really learned many other things. And the same with Japanese. I mean, if I guess if one watches, the more one watches, the more one gets used to. Anyway, um, uh, languages are something that I'm interested in, so which is why I'm commented a bit on that even in the past. And but unfortunately, one doesn't seem to be able to learn them as easily as when one is a child. So yeah, it's despite having watched a lot of Japanese media, I didn't quite. I only know like maybe 10. Nah. Anyway, this is irrelevant, no. So yeah, this wasn't too bad at all. I really enjoyed it. I guess one could say, um, but it was like a hill, many hills actually. You just go up, go up, down, Uh, obviously, when it comes to suicide and such, that's the down bits. But otherwise, what I really liked a lot as well, wished I had gifts off, but somehow this piece of software I have doesn't happen to just not function. Is the cartoons that they had. So I like it whenever those cartoons within a live action setting. I mean, I like animation in general, or drawings even more generally. But when they insert them in live action, it sort of becomes cute, I suppose one could say. This happened as well recently with like Stars on Earth that had, but they were more focused there, and sometimes they took over. I don't think they had as many like this where the cartoons were superimposed upon the live action. They weren't as small either. They were much bigger there. But yeah, they were quite small. A small thing coming out of shoulders like a like a devil, whispering in his ears or something. I quite liked how they drew them. Maybe not so much how they drew Ramon. There seems to be a cruder sort of drawing. I don't know, but she also didn't appear until later on for some reason. His character though appeared quite early on. Uh, it was a bit weird though how they drew him with a hood, even after he took off the hood, even when he didn't have the hood. Like there and then, I noticed sometimes you get the cartoon version of him popping up with a hood. So that was a bit, it's ideally you reflect him as he is right there and then to really get in the moment, in the context of the moment, I think, in my opinion. Another thing as well that seemed a bit weird is the fact that they use the cover image. You know, the poster has this image with him in a blue suit of some kind. That isn't one anywhere at any time in the series. So just a slight bit of false advertising, you know, but because in a way that is what attracted me to the series as well. In addition to the title, the fact that I assumed that he was trying to hide from her by dressing himself in the same color as the rest of the room. You know, so the poster was attractive because the room was blue and the suit was blue, and so that seemed funny, you know, in this sense. But it didn't happen at all. I mean, it would have been nice if it was like a sketch, you know. I mean, a lot of other comedic stuff happened, just not this. You know, so it would have been better if that was added. Yeah, and otherwise, I mean, it's still, it's still interesting. Just uh, it is what it is, really. But yeah. So what I think it could be said to be is just a relaxing series, I suppose. It's nothing too. It has sort of dynamics that Inuyasha had, but none of the high sort of drama apart from the suicide. But Inuyasha was all concentrated on this single event that happened at one point. It also involved life and death and such. But otherwise, yeah, it's still it's much more relaxing though, and it is ultimately, I mean, a jolly ride, I suppose.